They said that to change your life, you had to fight, suffer, and wait for years. But what if reality could be transformed with just 20 minutes of a silent decree? I know it sounds absurd, but that's exactly why no one told you before. True power is not in effort, it's in vibration. And science has already proven this. Biology responds not to what you want, but to what you declare to be. Most people live as if they were victims of chance. But chance doesn't exist when you understand the key that activates the field around you. And no, I'm not talking about empty positive thinking or parroting phrases. I'm talking about a forgotten technique, buried by the noise of the modern world that can change not only your destiny, but your cellular structure. It's simple. It's fast. And yes, it works, but it requires you to trade control for certainty, desire for identity, fear for vibration. What I'm going to reveal here may seem too spiritual for some and too scientific for others, but it's precisely this union that makes it really work. If you've tried everything and nothing has worked, maybe all you need is to remember who you are. Even before I learned about religion, rituals, or any formal belief structure, I understood something fundamental. Everything begins within. Creation did not come into being with memorized words or recited prayers. It came into being with intentional thought, with conscious vibration. There is nothing more powerful than a mind that declares with conviction, I am. This is not a plea. It is a vibrational affirmation of one's divine identity. When I understood that I am is a code, everything changed. It's not about wishing, it's about embodying the state. When I say I am health, I'm not asking for healing. I'm aligning myself with the frequency of health, becoming its very expression. The biology of my body begins to respond to this internal command, not by magic, but by energetic coherence. And the universe responds because I already am. Over the years, I've come to realize that the ancients knew this already. They didn't have laboratories or MRIs, but they had an intimate connection with the unseen. They didn't see God as something outside, but as something that manifests itself through consciousness. That's when I understood that every thought filled with certainty is a creative decree. And ironically, many people still use the I am to reinforce fear and limitation, and they don't realize that they are shaping exactly that. Every time I wake up, I choose my decrees with intention. If my body feels tired, I declare, I am energy. And I don't stop there. I take a deep breath, put my feet on the ground, and move my body as if the energy were already there. Because the body follows the mind. And when mind and emotion come into coherence, the entire biological field changes. It's scientific, it's measurable, it's real. What intrigues me is how this truth was forgotten. How did we leave aside such a simple, essential, and powerful practice? Perhaps because it requires something that many avoid: silence, surrender, and spiritual identity. But that was exactly when I found the forgotten technique that transformed my life. I spent years trying to understand why so many people affirm, visualize, and paint dream pictures, and yet nothing happens. Until it became clear to me, it's not about repeating words or closing your eyes and imagining. It's about what you feel deep inside. The real technique is not on the surface, but in an inner state of absolute conviction. And that's rare, because it requires total surrender, not to will, but to certainty. This technique has been forgotten because it cannot be taught in words. It is seen in practice. When I stopped looking for external signs and began to be silent within, I discovered something that no modern technique has given me: a real sense of completion before the result appears. I learned to feel as if I were already living the desired reality. And in that instant, the field around me began to change, always. It is necessary to disconnect from the world for a few minutes every day. No phone, no distractions, no expectations. Just me and the awareness of what already is. Sometimes I lie on the floor with my hands over my heart. Other times I sit in silence, breathe, and repeat internally, I am that which I desire. not to convince the universe, but to remind myself of my true nature, co-creator with the divine. This state does not come with effort. It comes with surrender. And I had to give up the habit of wanting proof before believing. It was hard, yes. The ego hates that. But when I let go of the need for control, I entered a space of pure manifestation. What was once doubt became direction. What was waiting became presence. And then the technique stopped being a method. It became a way of being. Today I understand why it was forgotten. Because it does not serve the ego. Because it requires the old identity to die. And almost no one wants that. But if someone is ready for this transformation, they will realize that this practice does not need permission or witnesses. It only needs truth. And it is this truth that will collide with the logical mind. The next obstacle I faced, the greatest battle I have ever witnessed, was not outside of myself. It was between my logical mind and my spirit. The mind wants guarantees. It wants something to happen first so that it can believe it. But the spirit feels it first. It trusts in the invisible. And while these two forces fight within, us manifestation remains stuck in the realm of potential, never reaching form. For a long time, I was a slave to doubt. I thought, how can I believe if I don't see anything happening yet? And that thought sabotaged everything. Because in the quantum world, creation doesn't wait for the ideal scenario. It responds to vibration. It was only when I started to sustain the feeling even in the face of the opposite that things started to change. And that, my friend, is emotional gymnastics. There are days when reality screams the opposite of what I want. The math doesn't add up. The answer doesn't come. My body hurts. But then I stop. I close my eyes. I breathe. And I ask myself, what would I choose to feel now if this had already happened? And I choose to feel that, even with the world pointing the finger. This is dominating the mind with the spirit. And when this happens, biology also changes. This is living epigenetics. I remember a patient who was being treated for chronic pain. She'd tried everything until one day she decided to live as if she were already cured. She changed the tone of her voice, her posture, her words. The pain began to lessen. Why? Because the body receives emotional command before any examination. The logical mind said, "This is madness," but the spirit said, "This is freedom." And she chose to believe, and it was in this confrontation that I realized the mind wants security, but the soul wants expansion, and all expansion defies logic. Therefore, only those who allow themselves to live first from the inside will discover what happens when the body sleeps and consciousness takes the helm. I developed a simple ritual to anchor this state. Right before I go to sleep, I enter a space of inner silence. I turn off everything, lights, cell phone, external noises, and allow my body to surrender. Then I turn my attention to the feeling of already living what I want. It's like falling asleep on purpose, effortlessly, but with total presence. In this moment between wakefulness and sleep, the rational mind relaxes, and the door to the subconscious opens wide. I take advantage of this window to immerse myself in the feeling of it's already mine. I visualize it in detail, colors, textures, smells, emotions. I can feel the taste of victory, the warmth of abundance circulating through my chest. It's a state so real that my brain can't distinguish it from the present. During the day, I reinforce this practice with small shortcuts. When I feel doubts are rising, I take a deep breath and remember that pre-sleep moment. Sometimes, all I need to do is close my eyes for 5 seconds and briefly experience the feeling of having achieved the goal. It is a quick but powerful command that repositions the entire biological system in the state of co-creation. For those who are just starting out, I recommend a practical exercise. Write down on a piece of paper 3 sensory details of what your achievement will be like. It could be the sound of applause, the texture of an object, or the joy in someone's voice celebrating with you. Then repeat these details mentally before going to sleep. Little by little, this will become a habit that transforms dreams into tangible future memories. And the most incredible thing is that this practice doesn't require hours of formal meditation. It fits into everyday life, in traffic, in the shower, when you close your eyes in the middle of a meeting. It's a pocket, key to access the desired vibration whenever you want. And the next step will be to understand why so many avoid this transformative simplicity. I realized over time that this technique was forgotten not because it was weak, but precisely because it was too powerful. It is simple, and that is the problem. People do not trust the simple. They prefer complex formulas, numbered steps, promises packaged with visual effects. But what really transforms is beyond the noise. It is in the stillness, and stillness is scary. Modern culture has become a distraction factory. Every second brings a new stimulus, a new comparison, a new anxiety. Speaking in silence, in surrender, seems like a contradiction. But that is where its power lies. When I began to practice this technique regularly, I realized that it required a kind of internal death from me, the death of the need for approval, of haste, of doubt. This death is, in essence, a rebirth, but most people avoid this journey. They prefer to continue praying from the outside, because diving inward means facing everything that is hidden, and that is not comfortable. But ironically, it is this discomfort that precedes all true liberation. The butterfly is not born without the collapse of the caterpillar. I've seen people abandon this technique after 2 days. I didn't feel anything, nothing changed. Of course not, because they were still trying to control, measure, wait for internal applause. But when you let go of everything and just stand, then the invisible begins to hear you. Because finally, you stopped shouting at the world and started talking to your essence. That's when I realized that this practice had not been forgotten. It had been buried by the fear of shedding one's skin. And shedding one's skin requires something even deeper. Recognizing that I am is not just an affirmation. It is a call to live as God lives. I've come to a point in my journey where I understand. When I declare I am, I'm not just saying something nice. I'm calling upon the very vibration of God. It doesn't matter what religion you're talking about. It doesn't matter what name you give to the creative source. What matters is that when you say I am, you are putting yourself on the frequency of the Creator. And that is sacred. This awareness completely changed my relationship with words. I began to treat them as vibrational commands, not as simple sounds. When I say I am love, my energy field reorganizes itself to reflect that. The cells listen, the genes respond, because the body does not distinguish between what is physical and what is felt with conviction. It simply executes the vibrational program. That's why soulless repetitions don't work. There's no point in saying I am prosperous with fear in your voice. You need to declare it as if you've just received a spiritual inheritance, as if you look in the mirror and see light. And it doesn't matter if everything seems the opposite on the outside. The quantum field doesn't obey appearances, but the coherence between mind, heart, and spirit. Today, every time I face a challenge, I don't ask for a way out. I declare, I am the solution, and little by little, this declaration reorganizes my perception. The answer doesn't come from outside. It comes from my internal state. It's like tuning a radio. You don't create the music. You just align the frequency to hear what's already on the air. And by living like this, I realized that I was never separate from the divine. I never needed to earn blessings. I just needed to remember that I was already an expression of them. And it was precisely when I stopped looking outside that I discovered that everything I was looking for was already here inside. There came a point where I no longer needed to confirm anything with the outside world, because I knew it was already there. That is the greatest turning point anyone can experience, realizing that what you seek is not just coming, it is already there. And everything changes when you stop trying to achieve and start expressing. Manifesting is not about pulling something from the outside in. It is about letting what already is emerge. For a long time, I was conditioned to believe that I needed to achieve, that I needed to earn it, make an effort, wait for signs. But the more I aligned myself with the I am, the more I saw. That reality was not something that I changed with force, but rather with frequency. And frequency is not faked. It is embodied. It is felt. It is lived, even when nothing outside seems to correspond. The real technique is not about manifesting a car, a house, or a relationship. It's about dissolving the illusion that these things are separate from you. I stopped acting like a spiritual beggar and started walking like a child of creation, not with arrogance, but with conviction. I stopped waiting for permission to live the life I knew could be mine. And in that very moment, everything started to fall into place. Today, I live as if it already was. Not because I'm lying to myself, but because I understand that this is the only way to shape the world out there. Vibration precedes matter, always. And reality, however stubborn it may seem, ends up bowing before a solid vibrational identity. The question was never, when will it happen? The right question is, when will you accept that it has already happened? And maybe, just maybe, whoever is listening to me right now is feeling that same spark ignite. Because once you recognize that truth, there is no turning back. But that is where the real journey begins. Now that you know this forgotten technique, tell me, why continue living as if you were separated from what is already rightfully yours? How many times will you still doubt your own ability to create a new reality when everything you need is inside you, waiting for a simple decree with conviction? The question is not whether it will work, it is whether you will have the courage to live as if it already has. Can you, just for today, stop asking and start declaring? It may seem small, but this gesture changes everything. And if you got this far, maybe this message came at just the right time. So tell me in the comments, what? Will you decree now, with full certainty, that it is already yours? Write it down, declare it, and make it your new starting point.